There are times that you're going to need to understand exactly why you're getting the results you are from your expressions. And we're going to need to understand the calculation sequence. Now, this is also known as the order of operations. Now, the good news is this is the same stuff that you learned in the 3rd grade or the 2nd grade. I don't know what. All I know is when I went to school, elementary school, we were pretty much dumb as dirt. We hit 1st grade. We didn't know half of our colors. We didn't know our alphabet. We didn't know anything. Back then, they thought that you were better off to show up totally dumb and let them shape you the way you needed to be. And of course, nowadays, our kids are, reading Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey by the time they start kindergarten. All right. So anyway, I don't know when you learned this stuff, but it hasn't changed. I don't know what any of that has to do with C++, but anyway. So here's what it works out to be. Generally, multiply, divide, add, and subtract. So if you create an equation with some multiplication, some division, some addition, and subtraction all in there, and you just write it out that way, no parentheses or anything, the compiler will find the multiplication, do that first, then it'll divide, then it'll add, then it will subtract. Now, you don't want to depend on that, obviously, and there's one minor problem with C++ when it comes to order of operations, and that is what you learned in the 3rd grade still works, but there are many, many more operators. And I'm not even going to list all the operators. There's probably 30 of them. And we're talking about the not symbol, greater than, less than, greater than, or equal to, your increment and decrement operators, and on and on and on. So how do we make sure that a calculation produces the correct results and the results that we expected? Well, the easy way to do this is simply to make friends with parentheses and use parentheses to group things because, again, just like you learned in 3rd grade, I learned it in 3rd grade, you may have learned it 2 years before you started kindergarten. The innermost parentheses get handled first, and then you work out from there. So you always go to the innermost parentheses, then the next innermost, and the next innermost, and finally you work your way out. Now, there's another thing that you need to understand. In C++, there's always another thing you need to understand, right? Well, something else affects this, and this is called associativity. Now, I'm going to tell you about it here, but I strongly recommend that you go out to Google and just type in C++ associativity and read about it just a little bit. But associativity determines how operators with equal precedence are sequenced. All right? So let's do a simple example here. I'm adding 4 variables together, w plus x plus y plus z. Now, what's going to happen with associativity is that the plus sign has an associativity of left. All right, so it's left associative, and so it is simply going to go to the far left of the equation that has all the pluses and work its way out from there. And this is what it would look like if we use our parentheses. All right, so if we'd used the parentheses, we would have said w plus x. All right, get me a number here. Let's say everything's equal to 1. W, x, y, and z are all 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 2 plus 1 right here is 3, and then the result of all this parentheses, this one and these two, right, is 3, and then we add that to z, which is 4. All right, hope that made sense. This equals 1, this 1 plus this 1 equals 2, and then this 2 plus 1 equals 3. All right, I probably made that a lot more complicated than I needed to, gave you too much information. Now, here's the thing you need to remember. Most operators have left associativity. However, there's just enough right associativity operators out there in C++ to surprise you sometimes. For example, the not symbol, the exclamation point, has a right associativity. The assignment operator has a right. Notice the plus, equal, or the increment. One of the versions of the increment operators has a right associativity. All right, so go out there, read about associativity just a little bit, and look at some examples of this. Better yet, go play with some examples. If you go back to the increment and decrement operators part 2, we did a little sample code out in Visual C++, you can use that very same program and just kind of play with some different expressions here without parentheses, and just make sure that they get you what you expected, and then play with using parentheses to change it. Now, in the example of plus, it really doesn't matter. You could have added W and Z together and then Y in the next. It's always going to turn out the same. But when you start mixing, addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, anytime you start crossing all those up, it can get kind of interesting sometimes. All right. So again, simple solution here. Always use parentheses to make sure you get what you thought. Always check your results to make sure you're getting what you assumed you were going to get. And then you just need to be aware of associativity, because this can, again, when you least need it to. You're trying to deliver a project by Friday afternoon at 4:30, and sometimes around 3 o'clock you're going to recognize you got a problem. It's caused by associativity. It's caused by a calculation giving you something you didn't anticipate, and there goes your afternoon, there goes your sanity, there goes everything. All right, so make sure you pay attention to this. It's one of those little things that looks simple but can come back to bite you really bad. So that's calculation sequence and what you need to understand about it.